Think about the absolute most advanced technologies in the world right now. We're talking generative artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, advanced robotics, the whole shebang. Well, what if I told you the foundation of this modern technological revolution was actually laid during a single, totally unassuming meeting at a roadside Denny's restaurant? I know, it sounds like complete Hollywood fiction, but it's entirely true. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to explore the absolutely phenomenal rise of NVIDIA.
Seriously, what if one single decision made in a small diner changed the future of technology forever? At that table sat three engineers with a remarkably bold vision. See, they weren't just looking to build another standard tech company. They were looking to solve a really complex computational problem that nobody else had quite figured out how to tackle yet. They essentially laid the groundwork for a company that would one day power the entire AI revolution. But to understand exactly how they achieved this, we first have to understand the man who has navigated the ship right from day one.
Section 1. An unlikely visionary. Where it all began.
You know, the sheer trajectory of Jensen Huang's early life is just fascinating. Born in Taiwan, he moved to the United States as a child, and he went through all those classic, really tough challenges of the immigrant experience, adapting to a new culture, learning a new language, basically navigating an entirely different world. But it was right here that his resilience was forged. He pursued an engineering education with absolute tenacity. And those early career stints, they were absolutely crucial. Working at heavyweights like AMD and LSI Logic wasn't just a job for him. Actually, scratch that, it was more like an incubator. He was learning the semiconductor business inside and out, absorbing exactly how computer chips were designed, manufactured, and sold. So this timeline wasn't just a career path, it was the ultimate training ground for what was about to happen next.
Section 2. The Denny's Epiphany. A contrarian bet. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. The year is 1993. Jensen Huang meets with two brilliant friends and fellow engineers, Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, at a Denny's in East San Jose. And over a few Grand Slam breakfasts, they formulated a massive, completely contrarian bet. At the time, the entire tech industry was totally obsessed with making the central processor, the CPU, do everything. But these three, they decided to found NVIDIA with a singular, laser-focused mission. They were going to build an entirely new company strictly around graphics processing. They firmly believed that video games were going to become one of the most computationally challenging problems in computer science, and they were going to build the exact hardware needed to solve it.
Now, to really grasp what they were attempting here, we have to look at the technology itself. A GPU, or graphics processing unit, is a specialized electronic circuit designed to rapidly manipulate and alter memory to accelerate the creation of images. In simple terms, displaying a 3D video game requires calculating the exact color and position of millions of pixels on your screen dozens of times every single second. A traditional computer chip just wasn't built for that specific kind of heavy lifting. NVIDIA wanted to invent a dedicated, specialized engine for this exact task.
And this brilliantly illustrates their architectural bet. Think of the traditional CPU, the main brain of your computer, as a massive, super-fast delivery truck. It can carry a huge load, but it makes one stop at a time, sequentially. It's incredibly smart and powerful. But the GPU is like a fleet of thousands of motorcycles. They can't carry heavy loads individually, but they can deliver thousands of small packages all at the exact same time. When you're trying to put 1,000,000 pixels on a screen at once, you don't need one big truck. You need that fleet of motorcycles working in perfect, simultaneous harmony. This idea of parallel processing was the absolute core of NVIDIA's big bet.
Section 3. Staring into the abyss. The brink of bankruptcy.
9 months. Just let that sink in for a second. In the mid-1990s, the harsh reality of entrepreneurship caught up with NVIDIA real fast. Having a great idea simply doesn't guarantee a great business. Their first couple of products really struggled. The market was incredibly fragmented, technology standards were clashing all over the place, and suddenly, the company was burning through cash at a frankly alarming rate. They realized they had exactly 9 months of financial runway left before the money totally ran out and they'd be forced into bankruptcy. Literally 9 months from extinction.
So under this crushing pressure, Jensen formulated a do-or-die survival plan that has honestly become one of the greatest leadership lessons in tech history. He decided to bet the entire company on one final chip design. There was no plan B. They had to execute with absolutely zero margin for error, and they had to finish and launch the product before that 9-month clock ran out. He rallied the entire company, demanding an unprecedented level of hyper-focused engineering. It was a true do-or-die scenario, and the culture at NVIDIA just became this intense pressure cooker of innovation. Section 4. The GeForce Revolution. changing everything.
While the result of that massive do-or-die bet was released in 1997, the Riva 128, and it changed absolutely everything. They hit their deadline, and the chip was a massive, undisputed triumph. It delivered incredible 3D performance at a time when the gaming industry was just absolutely desperate for it. The Riva 128 didn't just save NVIDIA from bankruptcy, it decisively pulled them back from the brink and established them as a top-tier player in the graphics market. It completely redefined the standard for what computer gaming could even look like.
When you look at the financial impact, it was just immediate and massive. They went from the terrifying flatline of the pre-Riva era, where they were nearly out of money, jumping way up with the success of the Riva 128, and then absolutely exploding into exponential growth with the subsequent launch of their legendary GeForce product line. The GeForce brand completely cemented their survival and provided the immense cash flow they needed to start dominating the entire industry. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were conquering.
Section 5. Dominating the market. Fierce competition.
Now, NVIDIA wasn't alone out there. They were up against some seriously fierce rivals like 3DFX and ATI. But they won this war through sheer, unrelenting business strategy. While competitors were taking a year or more to release new chips, NVIDIA's architectural strategy was built on rapid iteration. They focused not just on making the fastest hardware, but on making sure game developers actually wanted to use their technology. They provided software tools and support that the competition just couldn't match, constantly pushing the entire PC gaming market forward, but doing it entirely on their own terms.
And a huge part of this was driven by Jensen's intense leadership style. Decisive risk-taking and a highly resilient culture were kind of baked in ever since that near bankruptcy. But their real secret weapon? The relentless 6-month product cycle. Think about this. While the rest of the semiconductor industry moved at a fairly leisurely 18 to 24-month pace, Jensen demanded a new, faster, better graphics chip every 6 months. It was exhausting for sure, but it was brilliant. This hyper-focused engineering cadence literally exhausted their competitors. Companies like 3DFX simply couldn't keep up with NVIDIA's relentless pace, eventually collapsing and, ironically enough, being bought out by NVIDIA itself.
Section 6. The next frontier. Beyond graphics.
Because here's the crazy thing. Winning the gaming market, that was literally just the prologue to a much larger story. Jensen and his team realized a profound secret about the technology they had spent over a decade perfecting. They boldly declared, "We are a computing company, not just a graphics company." You see, the GPU, remember that fleet of motorcycles delivering thousands of packages simultaneously? Well, it turns out it was perfectly suited for applications far, far beyond rendering video games. They realized that parallel processing was exactly what the future of high-performance computing required.
Which leads us to a question that would honestly change the world. If a GPU can process thousands of pixels simultaneously for a video game, what happens when you use that exact same processing power to handle the unimaginable mountains of data required for artificial intelligence? What happens when you point that massive fleet of motorcycles at machine learning algorithms instead of video game textures? Well, the answer to that question would trigger one of the most incredible trillion-dollar pivots in business history.
All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the absolute most fascinating tech and business stories of our entire generation, NVIDIA. Now, it's incredibly tempting to look at NVIDIA right now and just see this massive overnight success, right? A company that basically just won the lottery by being in the right place at the exact right time when artificial intelligence took over the world. But actually, as we're going to see, that narrative is completely backward. What we're really looking at is a total masterclass in long-term vision, staggering calculated risks, and just relentless execution.
So that brings us to the ultimate high-stakes question hanging over the entire tech world today. Could another company actually replace NVIDIA in the future? To figure out if they can realistically be dethroned, we first need to solve a central mystery. How exactly did a company that started out making graphics cards for video gamers become the undisputed architect and literally the most valuable company of the artificial intelligence revolution? Well, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the AI computing revolution, then move into the incredibly chaotic era of crypto and fierce competition. After that, we'll hit the ChatGPT explosion, break down 10 actionable business lessons from CEO Jensen Huang, and finally, take a look at how NVIDIA is building the future of computing.
Okay, Section 1, the AI computing revolution. Let's set the stage for NVIDIA's massive, multi-billion-dollar gamble that ultimately altered the course of human history.
As a quick refresher on the foundational bottleneck of modern computing, think of standard CPUs like a single, incredibly fast mathematician doing one task at a time. It's sequential.
But AI? AI demands parallel processing. Enter the GPU. Imagine a massive stadium filled with thousands of processors all working simultaneously. This parallel processing was originally designed just to render pixels on a screen for video games, but it turned out to be the exact mathematical architecture needed to make artificial intelligence work.
See, deep learning requires feeding artificial neural networks millions of data points simultaneously. Sequential CPUs would literally take years to process that amount of data. NVIDIA's parallel GPUs? They do it in days. The company realized early on that their hardware was the absolute architectural key to unlocking this scientific breakthrough, and they positioned themselves perfectly for a totally new era of computing.
Moving right along to Section 2, Crypto, RTX, and Competition. As NVIDIA shifted its focus toward these massive data centers and AI, they had to navigate some of the most rapid, chaotic market waves we've seen in recent tech history.
Back in 2006, NVIDIA released CUDA. This was a revolutionary software platform that actually allowed researchers to program GPUs for general-purpose computing. And it was a massive financial risk. It cost them billions in R&D. Wall Street was absolutely panicking, but it laid the critical foundation. By 2012, researchers were using this hardware to achieve massive breakthroughs in deep learning. Then, seemingly out of nowhere in 2017, the cryptocurrency boom hit. Miners were buying up literally every NVIDIA GPU they could get their hands on. And right amidst all of this utter chaos, in 2018, NVIDIA launched its RTX line, bringing real-time ray tracing to the market.
But they certainly weren't operating in a vacuum. NVIDIA was locked in fierce, incredibly intense battles with rivals like AMD in the GPU space and Intel in traditional processing. You add in the extreme volatility of the cryptocurrency market, we're talking massive, unprecedented sales booms followed by terrifying crashes, and you start to see what it actually took to survive. It's an incredible lesson in resilience, surviving massive market whiplash while your biggest competitors are breathing right down your neck.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ChatGPT AI explosion. This is the absolute climax of the story, the exact moment where the generative AI breakthrough fundamentally changed everything, practically overnight.
For years, there was a steady, totally respectable growth in the demand for AI chips. NVIDIA was doing really well in data centers, but then, late 2022 happened. ChatGPT launched, and that demand violently exploded into a vertical spike. Every major tech company on the planet was suddenly scrambling in a total panic to buy tens of thousands of NVIDIA GPUs just to train and run their own massive AI models.
Because of that absolutely insatiable demand, NVIDIA's valuation skyrocketed, cementing them as one of the most valuable companies on Earth. Now, the media loves to spin this as an overnight success story, but we know better by now, right? This astronomical valuation is the direct result of decades of quiet, relentless preparation. They were betting the house on parallel processing and software ecosystems long before anyone else even saw the full potential.
All right, let's switch gears a bit for Section 4, 10 Lessons from Jensen Huang. We're going to pivot from the history of the hardware itself to the visionary mindset behind it, exploring the core philosophy of NVIDIA's iconic founder and CEO.
Jensen Huang is an absolute legend in the tech world, known for his signature black leather jacket and those highly technical, captivating product launches. He operates on a very specific philosophy. He believes that true success stems from a blend of long-term vision, relentless innovation, calculated risk-taking, and above all, extreme patience.
So how can we actually apply his mindset? Well, here are the core takeaways. First, prioritize long-term vision and relentless innovation over quick, short-term profits. Take calculated risks, like betting the entire company on AI super early, but execute with extreme patience. Also, don't just fight for market share. Go out and create entirely new markets. Leverage unique product launches, adapt instantly to market shifts, and heavily invest in developer ecosystems, like CUDA, to create absolute lock-in. Finally, expand way beyond just hardware, and always lead with absolute conviction.
Now for Section 5, the future of computing. We've seen exactly how they got to the top of the mountain, but how is NVIDIA's foundational tech actively building the world of tomorrow? NVIDIA's long-term vision sprawls across practically every major industry today. In gaming, it's all about photorealistic, lifelike rendering. In cloud computing and AI, they are the undisputed backbone of the massive data centers powering the modern internet. In robotics and autonomy, NVIDIA chips are literally serving as the AI brains for autonomous vehicles and humanoid robots. And in healthcare and science, their massive computing power is drastically speeding up drug discovery and creating digital twins, which are these hyper-accurate digital simulations of real-world objects, or even the entire planet, to help predict things like climate change.
Of course, the future is never fully guaranteed, right? NVIDIA faces massive challenges and profound risks in this new AI era, ranging from intense regulatory scrutiny to highly complex geopolitical supply chain tensions. On top of that, the competition is getting incredibly aggressive. AMD is consistently releasing highly competitive chips, and tech giants like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are actively pouring billions into developing their own custom AI silicon so they don't have to rely so heavily on NVIDIA.
But despite all these powerful competitors circling, NVIDIA's massive head start in both the hardware itself and their deeply entrenched CUDA software ecosystem gives them an unbelievable advantage. It all comes right back to their foundational mindset. The companies that shape the future don't wait for change, they build it. NVIDIA didn't simply ride the AI revolution, it helped create it. They saw the true potential of parallel computing, they took the massive risk, and they laid the tracks that the entire world is now desperately racing on.
And that wraps up our explainer on NVIDIA. If you found this breakdown valuable, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our deep dives. But before we go, I want to leave you with this question. If NVIDIA's CUDA platform gave them an insurmountable moat for the last decade, what is the next CUDA-level risk being taken today by a company we aren't even paying attention to yet? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.